One Briton to be diagnosed with cancer every 2 minutes by 2040. Energy prices are going up. And obviously, Israel want to preemptively strike Iran. This plus more in this morning's episode. Well, welcome to the episode this morning, everybody. I hope you're having a great week so far. We've got some interesting stories to run through today. Hope you're enjoying Ickonic.com and the new stuff that we've had put out over the last couple of weeks. I'm really happy to say that all the technical issues that we were having are now resolved. All our apps and TV apps are now back up to full capacity. So thank you for your patience during that time. Wherever you're watching the episode this morning, welcome. And if you want more of what we do, head over to Ickonic.com, as I say, and start your first month for just $1.99. Brand new content every single day. Right, as I mentioned at the top there, this story here from the Daily Mail. Cancer time bomb. One Briton will be diagnosed every 2 minutes by 2040. Regions facing the sharpest rise revealed in disturbing reports. Now, obviously what they've done, as they've said in that headline, is they've revealed regions of the country which seem to be affected more prevalently by this. What they don't do, and what you will never see when it comes to stories like this, is an explanation as to why there is such a rise in cancer, why there is such a rise in diagnosis, and why there is such a rise in things that are related to tumours in general. They don't want you thinking about that. They don't want you looking there, because if you do, you'll start to ask some legitimate questions about how the world may have changed in the last few decades. Because as with many things, if you have a situation where there's not a problem, and then all of a sudden there's a problem, you look and go, what's changed between there not being an issue and there being an issue? And most of the time, you will find the answers to the problem in that question. What's changed in that period in between? You know, for example, if somebody's fit, strong and healthy, and then all of a sudden they become fat, overweight and unfit, and in that middle period, they stopped eating well and they stopped training and they started eating a bunch of rubbish, well, that's clearly what's caused the problem, isn't it? That's what's changed from when things were good. So when it comes to this explosion in the last 25 years, really, in certain cancers, but particularly the last few, you can look at lots of things that have changed in our societies. I don't believe there is one answer to this. I think there's multiple factors. It's almost like being under assault from lots of different angles, because you know, there's people that will look at one particular area, and you know, the COVID vaccine, for example, is an area that people have looked at and asked questions about these turbo cancers that particularly young people seem to be getting since the rollout of that. Absolutely, that has a factor. However, the rise in cancer was already rising previous to that, so it's certainly not just down to that. That's a contributing factor, of course, and it seems to be a contributing factor in what they call the turbo cancers that seem to come and, you know, you're gone very quickly. But the ones that have been around for a long time, those figures have been on the rise consistently. I remember when I was a kid, the TV adverts were 1 in 4, then it's 1 in 3, and they're talking about 1 in 2. And in this story's case, one being diagnosed every 2 minutes. So the most common cancers, which it says are reaching unprecedented levels or will reach unprecedented levels, are breast, prostate, and lung. Now, prostate cancer is obviously most prevalent in men. Now, given what the prostate's functionality is, as an advocate and a speaker on health subjects, I have two theories as to what's causing the rise of this. One is the heavy refined diet, toxic food diet, because that's causing the prostate to have to work considerably harder. The other one is mobile phones and having your phone in your back pocket, your side pocket, all of which is emitting radiation very close to those areas of your body. You know, lung cancer, you can look at and go, okay, well, what am I breathing in? How is the atmosphere? How is the air? How is the toxicity within the oxygen I'm breathing? How has that changed? Well, we know that there is a lot more pollution in the air. We know there is a lot more toxins and forever chemicals in the air and in the environment, coming off of household chemicals, domestic cleaning products, furniture, that wasn't there previously. So that's going to be a contributing factor to that. So this is something that has clearly been happening in the background, in the sense of it's been happening, but it's not been anywhere near as highly discussed as it should have been or could have been. But all of a sudden, it's getting to the point now where it can't be ignored, because people are starting to notice and acknowledge and go, hang on a minute, this is insane now. This is absolutely insane, given we are supposedly at the pinnacle of human evolution, we are at the pinnacle of health and medical discoveries, yet this, essentially a fungus-related disease, is still taking the lives of so many, including people that every single one of us this morning will know. So this, to me, is not something that is happening by accident. It's something that is being allowed to happen. If you introduce a lot of chemicals into the environment that you know are going to have side effects, it's going to cause health issues. If you're going to introduce a number of toxic, highly processed foods into the environment, you know it's going to have a number of issues. And on the flip side of that, if you are reducing the nutrients available in even the better foods, the organic foods, because of the attacks on the soil, the attacks on the meat industry, the attacks on farmers and so on, so people are having to cut corners or feel like they're having to cut corners and not put as much emphasis on the highest quality because they're simply trying to survive, that's going to have a detrimental impact on health. And a big one, which doesn't get talked about anywhere near as much as it should, is how much more stressful people's lives are today than they would have been a few years ago, and how much unhealthier our lifestyles are than they would have been just a couple of decades ago, where people, particularly, men that were mainly the ones doing work not too long ago, you were doing physical related work, you were active. Now people are sat down all day. You had people that would have walked to work and had home cooked lunches that were made. That doesn't happen anymore. People go to the burger stands or the fast food shops to get their lunch. They're driving to and from work, sat in traffic, surrounded by all those fumes, stuck in that little box rather than outside getting fresh air and exercise. So there's so many things that have changed in our lifestyles in the last few years, which are leading to negative health repercussions, and this is one. And the fact that this isn't one of the top stories, in the last couple of years, we've made a few bits of content related to health, and two of the biggest things, in my opinion, that are fundamental to the health of the planet, and two things that we need to talk about are this and fertility, because both of them are essentially silent killers, in the sense of fertility is going to stop people being born, and cancer is taking the lives of so many people. And when I say silent killers, what I mean is the true impact they are having isn't discussed. We all know people that have lost their lives through cancer. So it's it's not silent when it comes to your personal experience of it, but it's silent in the sense of how many times is this the key issue that's talked about by a health secretary, by a Department of Health? It's not. Same with fertility, yet both of them are some of the biggest things that we need to be talking about, and understanding why the trajectory for them is a negative one, is going in the wrong direction. Because until we do that, until we start to acknowledge that, and as I said at the top, look at what's changed between this not being a problem to it being a problem, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And that's why we're seeing across the board the health of the planet get worse and worse and worse and worse, because that's by design. Of course, we speak about this on a regular basis. But when it comes to this particular story and this particular subject, not only are the numbers rising to a point that it's just insane, it's also the ages of people. It's now younger people. It's now children that this is starting to affect. That just goes to show how important this is for us to talk about. It's so important. So we talk a lot on this show about ways that we can push back, ways that we can find solutions to some of the problems that we discuss. Well, health is one of the easiest places to start, because you choose what you put in your body. You choose what you eat, you choose what you drink. And every time you do that, you are making a decision whether you're doing something for the benefit of your body or for the detriment of it. Now, we know that the system wants you to choose the latter, because then you become a customer for life. You become another statistic in stories like this. So by doing the opposite of that, by taking a bit of, control when it comes to your health and what you put into your body, you're immediately resisting the system. You're immediately resisting the cult's agenda for you and for humanity. Even if that's all you do, and you don't stand up at protests, you don't post things online, you don't try and explain your views or different perspectives to new people that might think differently. Even if you do none of that, you literally just choose to stick two fingers up to what they want you to eat and consume. That's a symbol of resistance that is 100 times more than the vast majority. Because unless we start doing that, these kind of statistics are just going to get even more out of hand and even more unprecedented than they already are. Right, moving on, but staying here in the UK. As we're approaching the end of the summer and heading into the autumn, we're expecting an autumn statement very soon, which will be talking about more taxes and less services and just generally making people's life worse. But also what tends to happen around this time is the energy prices through the winter tend to start to get discussed, and there tends to be a bit of a prediction and a heads up, if you like, for what they may be. Now, there's an organisation in the UK called Ofgem, which basically do the same thing as Ofcom that regulate the media and are the censors of anything that they don't want anyone to hear. Ofgem supposedly are there to regulate the energy companies and ensure they're not ripping customers off, ensure they're providing the right service, and introduce what they call an energy price cap, which means that these organisations, these corporations cannot charge over that cap. Now, the fact that you're introducing a cap goes to show that these energy companies are doing nothing except taking the mick, and they're there just to try and fleece you as much as possible, because if there wasn't the cap, what on earth would they charge? Because even with it, what they're charging is the highest energy prices in the world. Yes, that's the highest energy prices in the world for a nation, an island nation, that is surrounded by wave power, that has got massive oil reserves. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? That's got coal reserves. Yeah, it's definitely not an accident, that, is it? Anyway, as we're getting towards the winter, Ofgem have made an announcement that the prices will rise by around 2% for millions of households under their latest price cap rise. This increase, which is slightly more than expected apparently, means a household using a typical amount of energy will pay £1,755 per year in energy prices. £1,755 a year. That is utterly extortionate. And like I say, highest prices in the world. Add onto that all of the different ways that they are increasing taxes, that they are increasing other cost of living expenses, whether that be fuel, whether that be cars, whether that be rents, whether that be council tax, whether that be national insurance, whatever it is. Add it onto the long list of ways they're trying to take your money before you see any of it. And you can see the agenda is to clearly try and destroy anyone that may think they're doing okay at the moment. Anyone that may have their head above the parapet, anyone that may be getting by. They want more and more and more of that to pull you into that level of poverty. Now, the reason I think this is important to talk about is because there's two aspects to this. So one of the key ways they have manipulated people's minds into believing that these kind of things are acceptable is this fake narrative of human-caused climate change, right? So human-caused climate change is a complete scam from the moment it was conceived. It has not got a shred of evidence surrounding it. The carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is 0.04%, right, of the Earth's atmosphere in terms of gases. The human contribution towards that is about 11% of the 0.04%, right? Do you really think that's what's going to change the temperature of the planet? Carbon dioxide is quite literally the gas of life. We breathe it out, plants breathe it in. More carbon dioxide means greener planets. It means a greener environment. It means more lush forests. It means greater crops. The fact that you have been, well, I'm sure not you if you're watching this, but the fact that people have been convinced that one of the key gases of life, that without it we would have nothing, is somehow the enemy, is truly astonishing. Now, this is where there's a huge grey area that never gets discussed. You have extreme hard, right, left in terms of opinions on this. So you have people that say everything should be net zero, right? Everything should be net zero. Carbon dioxide should be banned. Flying should be banned. Your car should be running on refined vegetable oil or whatever it is. You know, heating pumps, insulated houses, all of that. We should not use no carbon dioxide whatsoever. You then got the other side, which is, you know, do whatever you got to do. Who cares? Well, the shade of grey in the middle, which is, can we create an environment where the air that we breathe is cleaner and full of less pollution? Yep, of course. Anyone that's watching this that's ever been to Los Angeles will know when you look up into the sky in LA, you can't even see clouds. You just see a thick black smog of pollution above the city. It's horrible. Is that good for our health? No, absolutely it's not. So can we reach a situation where we reduce pollution and we have cleaner air? Is that of the benefit of our foods and our crops and our health and, you know, our lung health and so on? Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. Do you need to go to net zero and to the extremes where you're driving people into poverty? You're destroying one of the gases of life. You're taking people's ability to travel. You're taking people's ability to live the lives that they live now. You're taking that away. Do we need to do that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's insanity, and it's all based on a lie. And that really is at the root of these energy prices, because people accept this and they suck it up and they get told that the reason these prices are the way they are is because of the reliance on fossil fuels. Complete scam. Absolute scam. The Russian war in Ukraine is the reason for the energy price rise. Again, absolute scam. If that was the case, then why, during that period, were energy prices going up to the point of absolute insanity? Why, during that period, then, were energy companies making record profits? Because if their costs go up and they've just passed that cost on to you, surely their profits remain the same. But no, their profits doubled. So if they've doubled your price and their profits doubled, their costs haven't doubled, have they? That makes no sense. Again, it's a scam, complete scam. And the reason this is important to highlight is because I think coming into winters, we need to be more aware of those around us. We need to have more of a community attitude, because community and human beings coming back together and supporting one another is one of the key ways we're going to get out of this mess. So, you know, I'm sure you will have people in your town, in your village, in your street that maybe fall into the category of being vulnerable when it comes to the colder weathers, having choices between heating and eating. Well, I think as a community, we need to be more out there with helping these kind of people, whether it be taking meals round, whether it be inviting them round for food, whether it be, you know, helping contribute if we can, whether it be starting community groups where maybe people chip in bits and pieces to try and support these kind of people. That's what will get us around this mess. Community. Communities have been driven apart for decades to create this feeling of isolation. And many people do feel completely isolated. They don't know the people that live literally next door to them. The way, or one of the ways to counteract this attack on us and this attack to divide us, is to bring back that community spirit, bring back that situation where people look out for one another. You know, there would have been a time not too long ago when people didn't even lock their front doors because of the trust people had in that community vibe. We've lost it and we need to get it back. And stories like this where people around us are going to need support, they're going to need help, that's where communities thrive. That's where communities come together and they support those who need support. They help those people who are vulnerable. So this winter, wherever you are in the world, wherever you are in the UK, if you're in a position to be a bit of a community leader and start to help bring people together, start to help support those who are vulnerable, then let's get up and do it. I certainly will be in my village. Let's get up and do it and try and make this system obsolete. We know it's failing. We know it's designed to fail. We know it's there to do nothing but fail us. But that community, that human spirit, that innate consciousness that we all have to want the best for each other, we can stick two fingers up to the system and we can go around it and we can go straight to source and help those people around us that need it. We know the system's not going to do it and it's not going to help us if we need it, but we can help each other on that human level. Right, final story this morning. A few weeks ago, when the peace deal, if you like, or the agreement was reached between the US, Israel, and Iran, we said that peace was not the outcome, and therefore something was always going to happen to ensure that that peace was a very finite peace. It wasn't there for very long. It was something that was very temporary. Sorry, it was going to ensure it wasn't a finite peace. So this story here, Israel urges Washington to allow preemptive attack on Iran. Israeli Colonel Jack Naraya, a former intelligence officer and special analyst for the Middle East, warned on Sunday that an impending second round of war between Iran and Israel, as Tehran weighs a revenge attack on Tel Aviv. Evidence for which? Absolutely nothing. There's a sense that war is coming, that Iranian revenge is still in the works. The Iranians will not be able to live with this humiliation for long. Israel must launch a preemptive strike against Iran in its present state, as a large part of its military capabilities are paralyzed. Okay, so essentially what you're saying is we've humiliated them and they're not going to put up with it for very long, so let's try and go at them again. That will bring about peace. Anyone want to chime in on that one? Think that makes any sense whatsoever? Of course it doesn't. Of course it makes no sense. Not meant to make sense. They want peace, they want war. They've been poking in the chest consistently, waiting for a reaction. And the Iranian regime will be owned as much as the rest of them. However, they are trying to poke and poke and poke to ignite a reaction. They've done it for years. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's something that is so predictable. That's one thing these guys are, this cult. They are very predictable. And the reason that it's easy to predict them is because the tactics that they use most of the time go unnoticed. People don't call it out. People don't even notice what they're doing. So as a result, they just rinse and repeat and do it again. If it's worked 5 times, let's try it for a 6th. And we've seen the situation in the Middle East where this tactic has been used time and time again. So, Iran views the al-Sharia regime as something that needs to be toppled, apparently. So that's this new regime in Syria. So they're using that now as a reason to justify more and more attacks on Iran. It's very interesting that this new supposedly, far-right Islamist regime in Syria are cozying up to Israel. Again, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Yeah. Don't look there. Absolutely nothing to see whatsoever. Security sources in Tel Aviv said Israel is making preparations to launch a harsh preemptive strike on Iran, but is holding back for the green light from Washington. So what it's holding back for is confirmation that if Iran fight back, which they will, Washington will fight on Israel's behalf, because that's what Israel do. They chuck a hand grenade into the room and then leave and hope the Americans do their fighting for them. One thing that's been beneficial about all of this is more and more Americans are waking up to the fact that Israel's probably not their greatest ally. Israel did 9/11. Israel attacked USS Liberty, and there's a number of pieces of evidence to show that Israel have attacked US troops in the Middle East as well. The amount of money that goes over to Israel from US taxpayers and the amount of additional money that comes in to Israel via US military support or military support with boots on the ground, airstrikes and so on. I think more and more Americans are starting to wake up to this fact. And that's the one good thing that's come out of this whole situation, is that naivety that Israel is our greatest ally and we must support them to our detriment, that ideology is starting to go. But essentially, what we're seeing with this story is what we said weeks and weeks ago, that this peace was only going to be for a short period. It was quieting down, and then it was going to come back and go again, which is exactly what the plan is. We know the ultimate goal is a third world war. We know that. If there is a proper war between Israel and Iran, we know that Russia and China are going to have decisions to make as to whether they're going to get involved. And if they do, there you go. Away you go, there's your third world conflict. Now, again, this sounds very doom and gloom. This sounds very negative. I'm not meaning to, because I think it's very important to understand and know this information. It's very important to know what the agenda is, because then you can see the steps and the roadmap towards it day in, day out with story after story. So people will be waking up to this story going, oh, what on earth, this again? It's like, oh, I thought it was peace. Like, no. As we pointed out on this show, peace was only ever temporary, because the outcome they want is not peace. So as we say, always, there is no war if no one turns up to fight. The people that actually have the power in these situations are the military personnel, the boots on the ground, the fighter jet pilots, the Navy captains. If you refuse to follow your orders, if you refuse to go and kill somebody in a country that isn't yours, who you've never met, who you personally have nothing against whatsoever, if you stop doing that, if you refuse to take part in that charade, this all stops. This all stops. If Netanyahu wants to go to Iran and have a war, tell him to get on his jet and fly to Tehran and have a punch-up. But he's not going to do that. He's going to send your sons and daughters to go and do it. Your mums and dads, your brothers and sisters to go and do it. Because that's what leaders do. They're not leaders. They're cowards. They're figureheads. Can you imagine Keir Starmer leading anyone anywhere? The guy couldn't lead a carnival. It's time to stop putting our lives and our futures in the hands of these insane maniacs that don't have a vertebrae of backbone between them. That's why they send you to do their bidding. And it's time that that stopped. All three stories that we've discussed this morning, we have the power to change. We have the power to change and to turn around. The explosion in cancers. Let's change the relationship we have with food, the relationship we have with chemicals, the relationship we have with our health. They're going to attack the elderly in particular and vulnerable through the rise in energy prices. Well, let's make these systems obsolete and let's support people around us that are vulnerable. Let's bring back the community. They want another war. Well, no one turn up. And what happens? There's no war. You might be sat there thinking this is a really idealistic perspective. But I don't think I'd get up in the morning if I wasn't an idealist. If I didn't think that all of these things I've just discussed are possible. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a walk in the park. We're going to have some challenging times ahead. A lot more challenging than the challenging times we think we've already had if we're going to get this show on the road and we're going to change the world for the better. But as long as we know that every step we take, we are doing it with the intention of making that world a better place. All those challenges, all that pushback will feel that little bit easier. It'll feel that little bit less intense because you know it's leading somewhere. And as always, the key to remember is there's billions of us and a handful of them. Their power only lies in our continued acquiescence and compliance. When that stops, it's done. No war, no fighting, no shouting. It's just done. Because the numbers just don't add up in their favour. That's why they've spent decades, probably more, trying to divide us, trying to get us fighting amongst ourselves, rather than realising we have a hell of a lot more in common than we have that separates us. And if we start with that and focus on the common enemy that we have, which is trying to enslave us all, we might just get somewhere. Well, thank you very much for tuning in with me this morning. It's been a pleasure to be back with you and share some thoughts. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Head over to Ickonic.com if you want to hear more of what we do. Gareth's show will be available later on this evening. He's got Kit Knightley on from Off Guardian and Warren Thornton, former UK military sniper, to talk about the current geopolitical situation. So if you want to head over to Ickonic, do that now. Links in the description. Start your first month for just $1.99. Gareth and Rich will be back with you tomorrow morning. Until then, have a fantastic Wednesday wherever you are. See you soon.